All right, hello everyone. I come bearing gifts of an update for the Superhive situation. But before we look at specifics, I'll give you a little rundown of what happened over the last few days. So I put my original video out kind of highlighting my concerns. There was just in case you haven't watched it, there was like legal concerns about, is there a conflict with consumer rights acts in terms of like imposing support periods? Is it a change to a customer's original contract in some way, or is it offering something of the creator without their consent? Is there a problem there, etc., etc.? Those are like the two main ones. There are extra issues about parity of storefronts. And my point in that video was that actually all of these issues can just be solved by making it optional. We are, by the way, if you're new to all of this, referring to Superhive bringing in a new plan that allows creators to sell products under a support versioning system where every time there's a major version, a customer can pay again to get that next version. They'll get to keep access to the previous ones, but they'll have to pay again for every new version. So I was trying to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the promise of lifetime updates on previous products, or it's not enforced because it won't be applicable for every type of project. So that's the context. That's the original video. On that evening, I sent Jonathan Williamson an email. So Jonathan Williamson, if you don't know, is the co-founder of Autotroph. I'm pretty sure he's the co-founder of Autotroph. Sometimes it gets confusing because there's lots of little like sub-companies like Orange Turbine and other things. But Jonathan's like head honcho. He's the guy that I will go to like talk to the company directly. So I sent him an email as a bit of an olive branch saying, okay, look, here's a private hotline between you and me to make sure that if you want, and in a very private capacity, I said, I won't share anything on this email thread. You and me can like talk about the system, get each other's opinions about things. You can clarify things, whatever, in a private way here, which will also importantly be away from any of the other creators, like away from the add-on developers that have been pushing for the system and those that have been against it, whatever. So I sent him that email, and in that first email, I believe I included like the bullet points of my main concerns. He then responded indicating that he will respond to those concerns, but he also offered a call. Now, usually I don't really like take calls with people, but I was like, yeah, sure. So I said, add me on this platform. I won't give fine details. I don't want people to spam him. So he added me, and then I was like, I know this is short notice. Like, do you want to call now? We had a call that I think was like 1.5 to 2 hours, something like that. Actually, I'd be able to find that out. Yeah, between 1 and 2 hours. Now, again, I won't say exactly what was said during the call, but it was productive. For the sake of transparency, I'll give you a general indication without saying anything overly specific. Because again, I promised Jonathan privacy. So we did discuss the opt-in nature of the idea for like quite a significant chunk. It went back and forth on a lot of things. It was interesting. When we got to certain subjects, I gave my opinion, he gave his. He asked me questions. We kind of dug into hypotheticals. I also gave like my alternative perspectives on the Blender community in terms of philosophy. He gave his perspective on like the kind of creator economy and the add-on creators at the top of the platform and what's worth protecting, what's not, or what should be protected and what shouldn't be. And we did not agree on everything, I will say. But the important thing is he was listening. I don't know how much of an impact like that call had on anything, but I thought it was important to talk to him directly away from all of the other add-on creators who have been lobbying for the feature the most, who themselves, again, haven't necessarily been able to answer all of my concerns in other platforms. In fact, I did go back and I had a look through the 2-hour creator like recording, the video call. And while there was a lot of talk about, like percentage this, percentage that, this, that, and the other, there was less than I expected or would have liked about the actual legal side of it. There was a little bit of shared honesty as well. I shared a critique of him. I let him know that I thought that he might have surrounded himself with yes men who stand to gain the most from a system like that and to lose the most from any critique. He also shared like some critiques of me from his personal opinion, which is good, I think, because it showed that he was willing to be honest, which meant that we could really get down to things on a bit more of a personal level. Although I acknowledge that when speaking to someone like Jonathan in his position, and he probably feels the same speaking to me, is I don't know if we can ever be fully honest with each other. That as in, there's always going to be some kind of bias. So to roll back a bit, one of the major things, like I said, we talked about was the opt-in nature. And we discussed things such as, I think he'll be okay with me mentioning this. One of the questions he asked me was, hypothetically, if it was entirely opt-in, do you think creators would actually use it? Or rather, how many? So I won't say like what the discussion went to like from then, but that's like the kind of thing that we spoke about. I gave some advice on if it was entirely opt-in, how they might still be able to encourage it, like encourage creators to adopt it. So after that, next day, I believe he spoke with the team. At least I think that's what he told me. And then the day after that was this 2-hour creator voice call, video call, or Discord that anyone could attend, which has been recorded and uploaded online. Yesterday, they finally put out a new email with like the updated idea and clarifications, including links to, hang on. So this is the email. I don't think we'll read through it word for word, but it links to a blog post by Carl. This may be in the original one, but maybe just updated or a new one, and links to information about the product versioning system, because that's actually important for how the system works. The bottom line of this is us creators who have promised lifetime updates will still be able to provide lifetime updates, and creators will still be able to make new products that can support lifetime updates. However, Jonathan specifically asked me to emphasize that lifetime updates are inherently unsustainable and Superhive has never encouraged them. This system ensures everyone can hold up their prior promises, but they are not considered best practice. Note that less than 1% of products have ever explicitly promised lifetime updates. They are the exception, not the rule. That's just one thing he wanted me to emphasize. Now, about this fact, I don't have to emphasize this. So again, like one of my more personal criticisms that's not actually about this system was about like the general overreach that seems to be happening between add-on creators and maybe now Superhive alike, where it kind of feels like there was maybe a bit of an overreach in some way. And part of that may be just a communication issue. But for example, like I don't work for Superhive. All of the opinions I provide and have provided, like on the previous videos, are based on the material that has been sent to me by their communication. That is another thing that we spoke about, actually, Jonathan and I, was about improving communication. And he, you know, obviously said that the system first presented to us wasn't like a finished like idea. They were still refining it. And I pointed out that, you know, well, at the top of the email, it said this will come into effect. You got to be very careful with those imperatives, but they acknowledged that. They acknowledge that there's like a communication issue. In fact, on this new email, it says, we all recognize a lot of noise around the support periods, and a huge part of that is because we failed to adequately communicate. That's on us, and we're sorry for all the stress that's caused. So they're aware that they have communication issues. So it seems that was taken on board. See, I don't have to, like when Jonathan asked me to emphasize things, I don't have to do this. You see, he hasn't hired me. I don't work for him. I'm allowed to formulate an opinion based on my own experience. I'm allowed to say no when he requests me to emphasize things like this. But for the sake of the olive branch, I was like, yeah, these are the things that are largely kind of driving the motive for the whole support system, or rather this first line, to encourage customers to pay again to create, to support creators when they have substantial updates for add-ons and such. Superhive are now taking the position that lifetime updates are unsustainable and saying that they've never encouraged them. Again, I don't know if it's really their place to make a decision on like that as like a merchant of record, but we can debate that like forever. That's not the point. So like we said, it is technically optional now. And for the creators like me who have products that want to support lifetime updates, this is how we do it. Firstly, we do nothing. Apparently, if we do nothing, as in don't use versions at all, if a product has no versions, then all files added to the purchase variant will always be available to the customer, even if their support period has expired. So that means it should be fine by default. Or we set up one version of the product and make it a perpetual one and simply set the release date of that version to the date that the product was released. That way, every customer, regardless of purchase date, will always have access to it. So it seems like by default, nothing will happen. And the system only comes into effect if we start adding versions using the product version system specifically. Now, where can you find that product version system? Well, it's sometimes a little bit hard to find. You have to go, instead of edit, okay, so edit is the place you're used to going when we're editing a product, you go to view. So I'll show you here. I actually put my Blender startup file on Superhive, but I never mentioned it. I completely forgot to mention it. It's something that's actually sold really well on Gumroad, but I never mentioned that I actually put it up here. So it's a cool bland example to show you here. I've gone into view rather than edit. If you do that, then there'll be a product versions tab. Note that if you go into edit instead, there's no tab there. You can make variations, right? And this is more for like if you're doing like licensing variations, but there's no version tab. So I just think that might actually be like a little bit of a user experience quirk. Maybe we should be able to access it from the edit mode, just default. So you go into view, you go into product versions. From here, you can make versions. So if I've understood this right, what will happen is, as add-on developers or anyone else makes new versions, like major milestones for like new versions of Blender, they will go here and create a new version, and the timestamp of that version is what's regarded when a customer is going to buy the add-on again, or rather that defines whether the customer has access to it based on when they last made a purchase of the product. So whether it's within that kind of 12-month period window, or there's an additional like grace period, which they do mention. Actually, I kind of want to avoid speaking about specific numbers in terms of like period times, just in case they make some more changes, because the system isn't active yet. So what I'll do is, you can pause it while we're here. I'll just show you these images. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can pause that and read through it if you like. So after that information came out, I emailed Jonathan back and said, okay, so if I'm understanding this right, what I could do in theory is, for all of my products that I'm providing lifetime updates for, I could just create one version, call it Perpetual or 1.0, and just only ever add files to that, because you can add multiple files. In fact, you can add folders and files in the versions. And he was like, yep, there's a couple of ways you can do it, and there's a few things to keep in mind. So this is Jonathan's words now from the email exchange with him from about like an hour ago. It says, customers that purchased prior to support period launch will get access to any version dated up to 2 years after their purchase date. This is the transition grace period. Customers that purchase after support period's launch will get access to any version dated before and within 12 months of their purchase. Okay, so we knew that already. Any files you add to those versions will be available to the customers that can access them. So this is the thing that applies to us with perpetuals. In your scenario of wanting to do a perpetual option, there's actually 2 routes you could do. As we said, don't use versions at all. So basically don't use, this feature. If a product has no versions, then all files added to the purchased variant will always be accessible to the customer, even if their support period has expired. So don't use versions, or use a single perpetual version like you described. So like I said, and simply set the release date to the date of the product release, because no one can purchase the product prior to its release. So technically every customer should have access to it. That way every customer, regardless of the purchase date, will always have access to it. Yeah. Now, ideally, Superhive doesn't want us to, kind of continue with the lifetime access model. Again, this is the emphasis. Lifetime updates are inherently unsustainable, and Superhive has never encouraged them. Now, again, I could debate this forever. I don't believe lifetime updates are unsustainable in like every situation. Like I said in the last video about my kind of video game business model, we could look at something like Steam. That's the way I think about it. I have the mindset where I'm overflowing with ideas for things to do. I always want to work on the next thing. Therefore, I'm not really concerned about lifetime updates for one single product. I have no doubt I can create 1,000 products and more going into the future if I really just dedicated to it. Like, making new things isn't a problem for me at all. But for the other like add-on creators that only have like maybe like one main flagship and can't do anything, maybe it's not even they can't do anything else, maybe there are other reasons, they've just invested so much, this is really focused for them. What I appreciate about this now is that I was talking about Consumer Rights Acts, and for me in the UK, we have our own specific rules which are largely adopted from the European Union with some like adaptations. What this being optional does is it does not put us in a weird precarious position where we may be breaking a law. That's really the most important thing. And going back to my previous video, that is just exactly what I was asking for. Just make it optional no matter what. So again, I have no idea how much of an impact my call with Jonathan had. But like I said, we did go back and forth on the question of opt-in, and I would say it was a productive conversation. However, this raises a question for like me as a creator now. I was, awaiting this final, I say final in quotes again because it hasn't actually started yet. It's starting in May. Is it May? Let's just double check that. Yeah, they say we are targeting the first half of May, shortly after the spring sale. So again, I want to give them like leg room. That's why I don't really want to say like specific timelines for things, because it's not come around just yet. And what this has shown now is that they are receptive and adaptive to feedback, which is what we wanted to see. So the question now is, what am I going to do? How do I feel about this? Well, obviously this means that I don't have to take down my Superhive store page, as in I have the agency to make sure that basically the promises I make are not disturbed. Thank God for that. Clear. The question now becomes, what will I do going forward? Will I use this support system or will I not? It depends. I don't want to make like a promise yet, but I did, again, I'm sure he'll be okay with me saying this because it's what I said to him. I would be willing to like give it a try, but it will have to be in a way where I design new products for that system. That's one thing that I emphasized. However, I'm not super interested in it, to be fair. I mean, like I said in the previous video, I want to go for more of a Steam model and like a video game model. And you can't tell me that's unsustainable. Fucking old Steam would have imploded a million years ago. Steam, the almighty, that makes so much fucking money that they can provide free games for people with like 100 gigabyte, bandwidth downloads. No. I have been speaking to a variety of like technical people behind the scenes since this situation occurred who have a lot of experience in managing like data services. And every single one of them said, there is no reason to think that on a technical level, a storefront working on just single purchases like that is unsustainable. The question of sustainability really largely comes from the question of livelihood. That's my personal opinion anyway, when we're looking at the cabal of the top add-on creators that often appear on the front page. I don't really want to charge people again. Over time, my product ideas have migrated away from regular add-ons like Python things and more onto things like asset libraries. And part of that has been facilitated by, again, something I noted in the previous video, which is that if Blender focuses on features which are more friendly to the creator economy, such as the asset browser and asset library and making geometry nodes like wider in its capability and making them able to be bundled as assets, and you effectively replace things like add-ons. You don't have to worry about GPL for things like the GeoNodes trees, and they effectively become add-on-like tools. That is positive for the creator economy. And also they're more stable over time, so they don't require so much versioning. So over time, I've naturally been gravitating towards the asset system. Shout out to Cyprin, kick-ass developer. So if I look at a trend of that, like kind of just self-analyzing myself in terms of ideas, I'm already trending towards a system that will probably require less versioning over time. With that in mind, I can spend less time on technical difficulties like bug fixing, which by the way, I procrastinate so much just because it's so fucking boring. And people say, use AI to help you, but no, because then I lose my agency over my understanding of the code, when they start rewriting in different ways. Yeah, but tell it to write in a specific style. That's not really how I work. Spoken about that before. When I play video games, like Helldivers with the wall bond system, you think, wow, this is fun. This is how I want my things to feel for people. If I can get into a good cadence of content in the future, and I believe I can, it just takes me a long time to get there, then that's what I want. I don't want to keep recharging people for the same thing over and over again. But they understand that, obviously, now, because they're allowing, perpetual versions. But the thing is, I don't feel like my idea for that is wrong or like should be shamed in any way. The idea that I can just make something and give people future updates. Like I want to be on a platform that can encourage that, just like Steam, that understands the business model and wants to encourage it. With Superhive now, it kind of just feels like unfriendly. Superhive has never encouraged them. They are the exception, not the rule. They are not considered best practice, yada, yada, yada. So the bottom line is, I don't really know. I'll have to decide. I have to see how I feel. When my new products come along, I'll have to do an assessment and go, yeah, well, what platforms can support it? Does this really need a version system? Over the last couple of days, while they were still having discussions between themselves and the more public creator forum, I did put together a couple of plans. There was basically, well, if they go one way about it, then we'll do this plan. If they go another way, we'll do this plan. Thankfully, because they're making it optional, I don't need to implement any of those plans. Saves me a lot of effort. All right, well, maybe I'll sum it up with this to end the video. The philosophy of Blender is quite simple. It's the freedom to create. For me, and what I alluded to in my original video, was that I, as a creator, would like the freedom to create my own support system or my own rules about how I interact with the consumer. I described how one of my core issues with the whole approach to the system was the fact that it was kind of predicated on the idea that the Blender creator economy is broken. I said that just because something is different, it doesn't mean it's broken. And when there were discussions about making something enforced, as in not optional, I think it's just a core violation of the one single tenet that holds a community together, which is that it removes the freedom of the creator. What I hope now is that this aspect, the whole not encouraging perpetual versions, doesn't get in the way in the future, and that we can maintain our freedom of choice for ourselves without this becoming a mind worm which will further down the line start to overstep its boundary again. So from the looks of it, this new approach from Superhive will be stable. I know during the whole conundrum, people were asking, oh, what about alternatives? You know, if anyone doesn't want to use Superhive, that's fine. Gumroad's there. Then yes, I told a couple of people, I've been speaking to people who specifically have huge experience in data management and have already actually built a marketplace and who are willing to enforce the core tenet, the core principle, the core column of this philosophy, but it's not quite there yet. But I've just been doing some QA on the side to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. And if they ever feel ready, and not a moment before, I will help them to announce their new marketplace. But we'll have to wait and see. But I've been around for too long. And I know that if you put too much pressure on people in one go, then they may crumble. But I'll let you know if there are any updates there. All right, so now that we've got this clarification, I'll probably unlist the old video. I won't delete it, I'll unlist it. So we've got historical provenance. So if you saved it to a playlist, you'll still be able to access it. And then this will be the most recent one until we do another one. All right, thanks for watching. If you want to support me, you can do so by, signing up to the Patreon. You'll help fund free project development for the Blender community, or check out my products on Gumroad. And I'll see you next time.